Thank you for joining the Black Hue Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. I'm Rosalind Martin, your host, a voice actor and mom of a young adult with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. This podcast is dedicated to enlightening, nourishing, and uplifting Black parents of adult children with ASD. Managing the daily responsibilities that come with the ASD diagnosis are challenging enough on their own. Layer on issues of racial discrimination, systemic injustices in the legal system, healthcare disparities, and more, and the journey becomes even more daunting. Too often, we as Black parents of adults with ASD feel overlooked and adrift in life's complexities. We either don't have the same supports and networks we had when our children were younger, or we never had them at all. We crave moments of recognition where we can feel acknowledged, heard, and truly understood. The Black Hue Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast serves as a sanctuary of connection, community, and camaraderie where no explanations are necessary. Why? Because we all just get it. During our time together, I'll share insights into ASD, engage experts on various topics, and offer moments of solace and laughter to hopefully help soothe your spirits. Join me so we can navigate this journey together. Welcome to the Black Hue Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. I'm your host, Rosalind Martin. My guest during this episode, titled Legal Guardianship, Conservatorship, or Power of Attorney, Safeguarding Your Adult Child with Autism, will be Barbara Glover, special needs advocate and founder of I Am LLC. We'll discuss the importance of exploring these options and why it may be crucial to consider them sooner rather than later. Listen in as we explore how to navigate these options and how each one works to protect your loved one's future. When our children are under 18, we as parents are their natural guardians, making decisions in their best interests regarding items such as healthcare, legal matters, safety, and living arrangements. But once they turn 18, the law assumes that they are competent enough to make these decisions independently, including those concerning property. For many of you as parents of adult children with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, you are likely aware of your child's mental capacities or limitations long before they transitioned into adulthood. You may have known if your child would struggle to make such critical decisions independently. However, some of you as parents might not have realized the need for legal protections like guardianship, conservatorship, or power of attorney until it was too late. Or still in this moment might not even know that you need these protections to safeguard your adult child with ASD. I'm Rosalind Martin, your host of the Black Hue Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. Joining me on this episode of Legal Guardianship, Conservatorship, or Power of Attorney, Safeguarding Your Adult Child with Autism, is Barbara Glover, special needs advocate and founder of I Am, and that's EYAAM LLC. Barbara Thank you so much for joining me here on the Black Hughes Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. And Barbara, before we jump into our discussion, please tell our listeners what the acronym EYAAM stands for.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Rosalind. I appreciate that. EYAAM stands for Exceptional Young Adults and More. This came about because I have a son who has Down syndrome. And I understood the importance in his life of how, when he turns 18 years old, that he's no longer just my little baby.
Right. Totally get it.
Yes. I decided to look into this guardianship thing. I have been told about it for many years by my husband, who passed away. And then all of a sudden it hit me. He turned 18. I didn't know what to do next, going through that transitional period in his life, that I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. A neighbor said to me, who also had a son who had a disability, said, Miss Barbara, you need to get guardianship. So I eventually said, okay, I'm going to do this. I picked up my phone and I called an attorney. And I said, okay, I am calling you in regards to guardianship of my young adult who needs to get this done. And they said, oh, sure, no problem. You can make an appointment and come into our office. I said, okay. And can you tell me how much that would run me? And at the time, they told me $3,200.
Yeah, sticker shock. Right.
Of course, I said, thank you very much, and hung the phone up.
Right. Yeah.
So that in itself was enough for me to say, whoa, what do I do next? Because I knew that this was something that needed to be done. As you said earlier, there are so many of us who do not understand that once they become 18, that you are no longer just the parent. You cannot speak on your young adults' behalf because they are adults.
Right. And before we jump into that, which you're bursting with so much wonderful information here. But let's start with the basics here. Can you explain the differences between guardianship, conservatorship, and power of attorney in terms of why parents might need one versus the other?
Okay. Guardianship is to cover your young adult once they turn 18 years old. Now, it is known that you can file at the time that they're 17 and a half for guardianship or conservatorship. But it's best that you file maybe right before they turn 18. And I mean like months before, a month before, or any time after. Okay. But definitely at least a month before they turn 18, if that's what you're going to do. Guardianship covers your young person with medical choices that they might have to make, financial choices that they will have to make, and also legal choices that will come up as them being young adults. That is what guardianship covers. When we talk about conservatorship covers, let's say, if for some reason your young adult was left an inheritance, and that inheritance included, I'm just going to say, a farm or property or a large amount of assets, money, that would cover that. And you would then have to be the conservator over that, meaning that you would be able to make decisions on what is to be done, to make sure the taxes is paid on the property, to make sure that the finances are put in the proper place. If there were investments to be made with that money, that they were taken care of, because this is something that your young person would not be able to handle. Right. So that is why conservatorship is important in those cases. Now, let me state this as well. Guardianship goes from 18 and over for a person. So sometimes we run into adults that have parents who need guardianship. So as an elder, that's another option for guardianship. But I know we're on the spectrum and we're talking about that right now. But I want you to know that guardianship is not just for young incapacitated. It's for the elderly too after they get a certain age. Let's say if I was taking care of my mom or my dad and all of a sudden they're not able, they have Alzheimer or something goes on mentally that they're not able to handle their own day-to-day business or day-to-day life, then I would apply for guardianship for them as well. Okay. So that just shows you how wide this goes with guardianship. Okay. And conservatorship. Now, a lot of people say, well, I could, why can't I just get a power of attorney? Especially, I'm going to handle all his affairs or her affairs anyway, so I can just get a power of attorney. Stop while you're ahead.
Because I hear people say that. They're like, it's like a default sort of answer.
Yes.
I'll just do power of attorney. In fact, I think I heard someone say that to me. I was having a discussion with someone and they said, I'm just going to do power of attorney. And it seems like that's the only option that people are aware of. And so, if you could just talk about that.
The people are aware of that because they know it doesn't cost them anything. A power of attorney doesn't cost you anything. You fill out a form, the other person signs it, and it's there.
But isn't it sort of a slippery slope, right? That you get someone to sign it, but then isn't there the question of the mental capacity?
That's what happens.
Of the individual who's signing it, right?
Exactly.
Because that person has to be of sound mind to sign that POA.
They have to know that what they're signing and what they're signing for. For instance, my young person, he would not have a clue of him signing for me to get into his bank account to handle financial problems or issues that might come up. He wouldn't have a clue. So that would not work. He would not have the capacity to understand a doctor saying that he has to have surgery on his back for something that may be minor, that he would say, okay, and have no idea that if I go to another doctor, the doctor say, no, we don't have to do surgery. We got medicine that'll clear it up. You get a chance to help make that decision for him or her with a guardianship, but not with the power of attorney, because they don't understand what they're signing.
Right.
And because they don't understand what they're signing, a medical power of attorney definitely will tell you, no, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. Financial power of attorneys, the same thing there as well. It's not going to work, because once you come across something and they start asking the individual about the details of what they've signed over, they don't have a clue.
Wow.
They don't have a clue. So that is why it is more important for people who have young people that have incapacitated disabilities, that they're unable to think for themselves, or they're on the autism spectrum and they're at that point that whether it's they're high on it or low, it depends. And I must say that when we talk about autism, there's such a spectrum.
Right, whether you're high functioning or lower functioning, or where you fall on that spectrum, because it's a spectrum disorder.
Exactly, because it's a spectrum disorder. So yes, we do have some people, young people, who are high functioning.
Right.
And they are able to basically handle everything. That we just got them like that.
Right.
But there's some things that they're not capable of handling. In that case, when you decide if you're going to do guardianship for them, you're going to have them evaluated. That is one of the process, and I know we'll get into that later. You're going to have them evaluated. And in that evaluation, you as a parent or a caregiver will know what they can handle and what they cannot handle. In all of that process, and I know we're going to get back to it, this is where it comes in, that the rights thing. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to take away all their rights, as, now they're not going to be able to vote. Excuse me for saying it. That's a lie. You cannot take away a human right. That's a human right. They will be able to vote. I want to make that perfectly clear. Now, as the parent of this young person, you can say, you don't want them to vote. And that can be written in that they're not able to vote. But you cannot just the court can't automatically just take that right away from them. So I want that to be real clear. They are able to vote. They are able to get married, even though marriage is a contractual agreement. There's a lot of contracts they're not going to be able to sign. But as the parent or the caregiver in the process of getting this guardianship, you can speak it over with the attorney that will represent them and let them know, I do want my son or my daughter to be able to get married. I do still want to be the one that's over their finances at the same time. That can happen. And how I know that is because that's what I've done for my son. Okay?
Yeah, because I think there's some misconceptions about what happens with guardianship, that all of the rights are taken away. And there are different, I guess, levels. So who makes the decision? Does the court make the final decision?
The court is going to make the final decision. You put in, as the parent or the caregiver, the petitioner, let me put it that way, as the petitioner, what you would like that young person to still have the rights to do. Okay? And like I said, certain rights you can't take away from them unless the court agrees with you. Okay? So, in case of, let's go back to the voting. My young person is not my particular, but an individual. That young person is maybe blind, they can't see, and, you say, well, they're not going to be or hear or something to that. They're not going to be able to understand any of this. So that right, we're not worried about him having it or her having it. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's understandable. That is understandable. But if you have a young person like my son who looks at the news, who tries to read whatever he can, and understands what he's looking at to a certain degree, he should still have that right to vote.
So it really sort of boils down to the individual's level of comprehension.
Level of comprehension.
Okay.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So let's move into what are some of the potential implications of not having guardianship or conservatorship or POA. I think you touched on it somewhat in terms of like not being able to make medical decisions on their behalf, particularly with regards to HIPAA laws, not being able to access medical records, or request a medication refill on Motrin, let's say, or, can we talk about that? And also hitting on potential issues within the legal system. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
So we're going to start with the HIPAA laws. Because of the HIPAA laws, that is what is one of our biggest issues as a parent. You've been with your child 17 and a half, 18 years, 19 years, 20 years. And all of a sudden you take him to the doctor and you say, well, this doctor's known my son or my daughter for years. I'm not worried about it. It's going to be okay. And all of a sudden that doctor is not there anymore. Now, what do? The first thing the medical doctor or nurse or who's ever in charge is going to ask, are you the guardian?
And they will do it.
Yes, they will.
And they will do it.
Yes. And you're going to say, well, I'm the mother or I'm the father. And they're going to say, okay, that's fine.
Do you have the paperwork?
Do you have the paperwork? Or they're just going to say, but are you their legal guardian?
Yeah.
Yes. Legal guardian. Legal guardian means that you have been through the court system and they have granted you the guardian of this individual. That is what happens there. So it's important because once you say that you're not the legal guardian, they will ask you to leave the room.
I just couldn't even imagine my kid. And I say kid, I my son is 22 years old, but he's always going to be my kid. So I'm going to say kid. For my listeners out here, he can be 82 and he's still going to be my kid.
Exactly.
But I can imagine my kid being left alone to his own devices, having a medical discussion or any sort of discussion.
I can give you
with someone.
Example. I'll give you an example of that. I had a client call me and her son had just turned, I think he was 22 at the time. And she called me and she told me, Miss Glover, someone gave me your number and said I needed to talk to you. And I said, okay, sure. And she said she took her son to the doctor and they told her that her and her husband had to leave the room. The son was nonverbal.
Oh my gosh.
He has autism on the lower spectrum. He could not understand anything that the doctor was saying to him.
Oh, wow.
And it all came about because he asked, and this is why they asked the question if she had guardianship, because they asked him a question and she said to them, he doesn't understand what you're saying. And the doctor said, what do you mean? She says, he doesn't understand nothing you're saying. Mm-hmm. He has autism. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, I know that, but he can hear me. And she says, sir, he doesn't know anything you say. And he said to her, are you his guardian? And she says, I'm his mother. And he said, are you his legal guardian? Mm. And she says, you mean not legally? Do I have to go to court or something? And he says, yes.
No.
And she says, no, I haven't done that. He says, well, I'm going to ask you to leave the room.
Oh, no.
That is the worst thing you want to hear.
Oh, absolutely.
In that situation. That is the scariest thing you want to hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I just
it
couldn't even
makes no
imagine.
difference.
Yeah.
It really makes no difference what level of the spectrum they're on, because my daughter, who's not on a spectrum, and she's 42 years old, if she wants mama to be there, she wants mama to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But she has the right to say, Mom, I want you to be here. Mm-hmm. And your child has the right to say, Mom, I want you to be here. But if they're not able to communicate that with you or to the doctor or to the nurses or any medical, let's say a dentist, it doesn't matter. It's not just the MDs that we're concerned about, we're talking about all professions in the medical field. Mm-hmm. So if they're not able to communicate that to you, according to the HIPAA laws, you have to leave the room.
Right.
It's just that simple.
And it's important that parents understand that when you don't have the guardianship in place,
right,
that's the sort of nightmare that you're going to potentially face.
Yes.
And it's why it's so important. And I appreciate that story. And it's a great segue into the next story.
Yes,
here.
it is.
And you know, Barbara, I was eternally debating whether I wanted you to tell this next story. And it's a story that I've heard you share on more than one occasion, that within the context of this discussion, unfortunately bears repeating. You shared a great story in terms of potential implications from a medical perspective. But we talked about it and decided that it might be good for you to share this next story with our listeners, using guardianship again as an example.
Exactly.
That will hopefully serve as a cautionary tale to some of our parents. What could happen, from a legal perspective. And I cringe every time I hear this incredibly sad story.
Yes.
And I will probably turn off my mic and walk away. I don't know. But would you please share your story with our listeners about the young man who has ASD and he was detained within the legal system and his parents didn't have guardianship at the time of his detainment?
Yes. That's scarier than the medical.
Thank you, Barbara, for saying that. It just made it even worse. But
yes.
Yeah.
I ran across a client at the time. I had just started my business. In the process of starting my business, I ran across a parent. Actually, I knew the young man before I knew the parent. Let me go there. I knew the young man before I knew his mom. And what ended up happening, and I'm not going to give any specifics about how it happened, but I am going to tell that it happened at a church. I will say that. This young man had an outburst at a church, and people there did not understand what was going on. I just happened not to go to church that Sunday, so I didn't know what had happened either. Next thing you know, I come to church the following Sunday and I see the police roaming through the parking lot where I was out helping. And I'm being myself, being silly, laughing with the police. And he was like, "We're looking for this individual." And I said to myself, "What are you looking for him for?" I know he hasn't done anything wrong.
Right.
So what are you looking for him? Mm-hmm. But anyway, they didn't say anything. They kept looking. All of a sudden, I get the news when I'm going back up to the church that he had this outburst and he said a couple things and they had put him out of the church. Mm-hmm. Oh, that just broke my heart.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What? Then I asked, did anyone speak to his mom? They told me that they had called her. Now, let me say this. As a parent with a special needs child, whether it be autism, Down syndrome, syndrome X, nobody knows what you go through on a daily basis.
They really don't.
They don't. So my first question to the ones that said, we called his parent, we called her. I said, and she acted like she wasn't concerned. Mm-hmm. I said, what? I said, back up, because now you're hitting home base, because this is me. I'm saying, how do you have the right to judge this woman?
Right.
You don't know what she's gone through. You don't know what her day was like. You don't know what her last 27 years have been like before you start judging her as she doesn't care.
That's right.
So immediately I got her number and I gave her a call and I spoke to her and she was on the defense. Let me say this. At first when I talked, she was getting ready to be very defensive with me, but I explained to her, I have a child who has special needs and I just want to talk with you. She said, oh, okay. I talked with her and I said, do you have legal guardianship over your son? And she said, what do you mean? I said, and she said it just like that. What do you mean? I said, legal guardianship. In the state of Georgia, when they turn 18, and you've heard, our listeners out there have heard us say this, when you turn 18, you become an adult.
Right.
So our young people become an adult, and anything that can happen to you or me as an adult, financially, medical, physically, anything can happen to our young adults, and nobody can say anything about it unless you have guardianship.
Right.
Okay. So now, as I said earlier, the police is looking for him. And about time the next service, they found him, and they've taken him off to jail. So I'm talking to this mom, and I'm saying, you know what? You've got to get guardianship. You've got to get guardianship. And she was like, okay. So
she didn't understand
she didn't
gravity.
understand the depth of how important this was. So she was like, okay. I said, I tell you what, I'm going to meet you somewhere and I'm going to give you the form and talk with you about it. That's how I started. That's how I started this business, by just informing parents, informing them. Till I finally realized when I called her 2 weeks later, the paper was over under something in the corner and nobody had done anything with it. I said, that's it. This will never happen again on my watch. Now, let me go into depth. So the mother and I decided to start doing the paperwork. But remember, I said the police had picked him up.
Right.
This time she was able to go up there and get him out. Finally, months later, she was not. Because of him having autism, although he was told not to come back to the church, he was on an automatic pilot. He'd go to the church every Sunday, every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday. That was his norm. That is something he was going to do. You say, well, why didn't she keep him in the house? Why didn't she lock him in? Let me tell you, he was 27 years old. she had to work. He was going to find a way to get out that house. And she worked on Sundays. So he got out and he would go to the church. He would walk 9.5 miles to get to church. You was like, if he could do that, you know, why he can't understand? Because that's how autism is. It's a psychological, they know what they need to know when they need to know it, and that's what they're going to do. So,
and it's a routine.
It's a routine.
Right?
They just have a routine in their head, and that's what they're going to do. So now I see her later. She tells me he's locked up again. This time, an officer, and I'm not going to call out any names, told her that you're not going to get him back this time. We're going to make sure of that. Now, if I know this young man has autism, everybody at that church knew that young man had autism. Okay?
Or at least had
something going on.
Yes.
Something is going on. He's not your average 27-year-old. Okay, let's just put it like that. Now he's locked up. She gives me a call. Miss Barbara, I don't know what to do. They're not letting me talk to my baby. They're not letting me come. Right, because guess what? She doesn't have guardianship.
And they're treating him as
a regular...
Right, like he's part of the general population.
They don't
him
make
in
any general
sort
population.
Of distinction.
None
he gets
whatsoever.
no preferential treatment.
None.
Right.
None
they
of
treat
that.
our loved ones
The same.
The same.
He's up there now. She makes arrangements for me to come visit him with her. I go up to visit the young man with her. His arm is broke. I believe he has a black eye. And when I see him, he says, bringing tears to my eyes. He said, Miss Barbara, look, my arm broke. I said, oh, baby. I said, just hold on. Mama gonna get you out of here. And he said, okay, Miss Barbara, okay. And I had to get up and walk out. I said, talk to your mom. I'm gonna go out for a minute. I walked out of there and stood in that little hallway. And I screamed and I shouted and I kicked because I couldn't believe that nobody there could understand that this baby needed serious help. He needed help. This being said, it was so important that we get guardianship because in the process, she was not able to get back to her child. She was not able to go and make any arrangements other than trying to get an attorney to get this baby out. And you say, well, why wouldn't they just let him go? Because that's not how our legal system works. That's not how it works. So now he is behind these bars. He's been there for months. And
wow,
they now are telling her that in order for her to get him, let me go through this. In order for her to get him out, she has to file all these different documents, and it just happened. Now, let me show you how the system can turn against you. She was working with a person that was okay with her until they found out that she didn't have guardianship. When they found out she didn't have guardianship, that was an open door for the state to take control. That is another scary thing. You don't want the state to come in and take your child. Let me make that very clear.
Please do.
Very clear.
Yes.
The state can come in under certain circumstances and take your child when you don't have guardianship over that individual. That you do not want. Can't say it enough. You do not want that. So after this, she's calling me. I'm sitting down with her now. We're getting this paperwork done. And they decide to release him sometime. It must have been January or something. So it's cold out. Mm-hmm. They release him, but they give her no call. They give her no idea that this baby is going to be released. And they've already made plans, the state and the social workers, to send him to a home somewhere. I'm not going to state the name. I'm being very clean about this. Right. To send him to a home that I personally know, because I volunteered there to be nosy, to see what was going on. They sent him there. And that individual, that facility that they sent him to was very abusive. Oh. Not nothing I'm guessing, something I know. I was dumbfounded when I heard that's where he was going. So we set it up that the mom was trying to get to go see him. And the attorney that was supposed to represent him in the guardianship case for the mom, because we've done the paperwork, turned on her because he knew the person who owned the facility that he was at. So now mom has nothing to fight with. They're not even acknowledging her guardianship at all. Not her guardianship, because she doesn't have it yet. Let me back that up. She doesn't have it yet. We're working on getting it filed into the courts. Actually, we're filing it, and now the attorney is turning on the other side. What the heck? So through this process, they've now sent him to this home. He's there. Mom can't see him. None of his family members can see him. And the lady who owns the home, the facility, is now fighting the mom in the courtroom for guardianship because he's been there over 30 days. What happens? There is a happy ending to this. Let me say that.
Please, let's get to the happy ending. I'm trying to keep it together here. Yeah.
Let me get you to the happy ending.
Please. Yes.
So it ends up that the judge who was residing over this particular case turned around, and the first judge that was residing over the fact that we were trying to get guardianship, he was like, this is a cat fight. I don't want to have no parts of it. Get it together. We'll come back. Great. Not a problem. Also, there was a civil suit going on with this young man at the same time for whatever reason. Now, the judge that had the civil suit going on him called the mother. This was almost a year later. Called the mother and said, can you come get your child? The reason is because the facility they sent him to had now been drugged into court for all these different accusations. Someone had died in the process, and they're now trying to cover up and clean up their mess. The mother called me and said, you're never going to believe what is going on, Miss Glover. And I said, what? She said, have a seat. She says, my baby's coming home. I said, what? She says, yes.
What a blessing.
Yes, he's coming home. I was so excited for her. She was just in tears.
Oh,
could you imagine for a year not knowing what's going on with your child?
I couldn't.
What's happening? You can't go see him. Nobody can talk to him because it's not what you know out here still. It's who you know. Protect your child with guardianship, please, so that you can have a say over what goes on with them. That child does not have to live with you. Let me make that perfectly clear. We have some children or young people that are in facilities and their parents have guardianship. That means anything that goes on in that facility, they have to talk to those parents before a decision is made because they're the guardian. Know that. So important. So that is another reason that I got into this guardianship preparing. And believe me, I am not an attorney. Let me make that perfectly clear. But I have studied this since 2016. I have walked in the courtrooms with parents to support them in their going because the courtroom can be a little scary to some people and they need all the support they can get. So as an advocate, I go with them and sit there and just hear what is going on so that they feel comfortable that they heard the same thing.
Right.
Okay.
Well, Barbara, I just really appreciate you sharing these incredibly powerful stories just so that parents can understand the gravity of how important it is.
Right. I've got one more for you, and this is a personal story.
Oh, Barbara, don't make me cry.
No,
please.
this is not going to make you cry. But this is a story that happened to me with my son financially. It's another situation. My son and his dad has the same name, okay? The only difference is my son is a junior. So I got a call. Actually, I got a couple letters in the mail. And I was like, oh, this is something for Dad. I didn't pay it any attention, paid it no attention. Till finally one day, I opened it up. And they said they were going to sue my son for something like $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it was. I'm like, what? No, that can't be done. What is this? Well, thank God I had guardianship. Thank God I had guardianship. So I got on the phone immediately and I called the whoever it was. I called them and I said, excuse me, I'm receiving these letters regarding you suing my son. And they said, what is the name? And I gave them the name. And yes, we have here that he owes a letter. I was like, no, my son don't owe you anything. Well, I said, my son is, at the time he was like 19 years old. I says, and I'm his legal guardian. And there's no way my son has racked up no bill with you or anyone else because I take care of all of his finances. Well, do you have proof of guardianship?
Guess what?
And guess what? Give me your fax number.
Right.
And immediately I sent over the document and showed them that, yes, I was his legal guardian. And because of that, that was wiped off.
Beautiful.
So
you have the receipt, Barbara.
I have the receipt. I know how this works. So I'm telling my parents every day that I talk to different clients. This is important. There's so much you can avoid by having guardianship.
Absolutely.
So much you can avoid.
Yeah, I've had to pull my receipt out a few times. Johnny on the spot. I keep a copy in my glove compartment in my car. I have it in a file on my phone.
Right.
Can I send it to your printer? I mean, so I've had to do that a couple of times.
Yes.
Because they are now like really, really
they're really
challenging you.
Yes, they're challenging you because more people are aware of it.
Yeah.
More people are aware. When I was starting with my son, when he, almost 8 years ago, when I started with him about guardianship or started learning, they didn't even talk about it at the schools. I got it from a parent who said it to me.
And you're absolutely right. Go ahead and finish your yes. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I'm at the IEP meetings back then and everything, and nobody had said anything to me about guardianship other than my husband mentioning it to me at one time. And my son was 11 when my husband passed. So now we're talking about 18. Nobody's mentioned it to me until my neighbor mentioned to me about guardianship again.
And that's why it's so important, listeners.
Yes.
If you don't have guardianship, get it sooner rather than later.
Yes.
If you have family members, friends, people who have kids who will be transitioning into adulthood soon, do it sooner rather than later. Because when my son, I remember he was 17 years old, I think.
Right.
And I was talking to someone else whose her child is a few years older than my son. But anyway, her daughter has a completely different disability. But we were talking about guardianship, and I was like, huh? She's like, yeah, you need to get guardianship. And I was like, well, what is, and she was explaining what it entailed and all of that. And I was like, well, how do I do it? I was completely lost.
Right.
And she's like, oh, well, she kind of didn't talk me through the whole process, but I had enough to where I could start Googling and trying to figure it out.
Right.
And she's like, well, you should do it. Start when he's 17 and a half, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And so we just don't have enough information, right? We don't even know that it's something that we should be doing. And we don't know about the potential implications
Right.
of what could happen if we don't.
Exactly. Let me say, this is another thing. Parents, please be aware of the transitional fairs that goes
Yes.
on in your community, in your high schools, in your activity centers. Anyone that says they're having a transitional fair, and especially for kids with disabilities, make sure you attend. I, as a vendor of those events, I'm always there. I'm always there to talk about guardianship. There's different ways to do it. And since we're there's different ways for you to get this guardianship done.
Now,
Yeah. Okay.
which, again, is a great segue into my next question.
Right.
Barbara, which is, how does a parent go about getting guardianship or conservatorship, or if you must have it,
Right.
a POA?
POA.
And we could talk about it from least to most expensive options. So I guess
Right.
the first one would be sort of a do-it-yourself. So let's start with that one.
Okay. So you can do it yourself by going to, and if you're here in Georgia, let me say here in Georgia.
Yes,
you can go
thank you.
to
Yes.
The state of Georgia website, and I have it right here. You would think I know it off my head, but I don't do that.
That's okay.
You can go to the Georgia Department of Human Resources, Division of Aging Services. Now, their website is www.aging.dhr.georgia.gov.
And I will post that to my website, blackhughessociety.com, and that's HUES. blackhughessociety.com. I will put a link to that on my website. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. That is one way to go about getting the documents so that you can pull those documents off. It's a petition that you would get from the courthouse. Now, you can go to the courthouse in your county. Let's say you live outside of the state of Georgia. Let's go there, because guardianship is needed everywhere.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barbara. I was going to get to that too,
Yes.
but thank you for, please address that. Yes.
It is needed everywhere. But here in the state of Georgia, you can go to the probate courts. You can go down to your probate court, ask them for a adult guardianship / conservatorship form, petition. They will give you that. They are not going to give you any information about how to fill it out.
They will not do it.
Don't ask,
won't.
because they won't.
Right.
Okay? At that time, you can go through it. You can do your best to fill it out. And I have my own, because this is what I do. So I'm going to give you some ideas of what happened, and Rosalind can back me on this because she did hers herself, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So you can go ahead on, fill it out to the best of your ability, go through it. A lot of times what happened, you miss something. You miss something. So when you go to take it back in, they'll say, no, we can't accept this because you missed something. You say, well, what do I do? What do I put it? Nope, we can't give you that information. So now you're going back to the drawing board, trying to figure out what it is you miss or what you want to do or how you get. You're getting frustrated.
Right.
You're getting frustrated because you already know that it's a process. So you're getting real frustrated.
It's a process. Yes.
So you can go to your legal aid society. You can go to the meetings that they have, like on every Thursday or whatever your district has, or I should say your county has available for you for the legal services.
And this is across states.
Yes, this is across states.
Most states have a legal aid organization,
right,
where you can go and get help, and you can
Yes.
ask questions,
Yes.
and maybe even get assistance with filling out guardianship forms and the paperwork and so forth. So yes.
Let me say this. That assistance is going to be very minimal, the majority. I'm just going to be real honest with you. It's going to be very minimal. Why? I can't answer. I can't answer that because I don't know. I don't know why they just don't sit down with you, go through that form, and help you fill that form out. Because I do it all the time. But because it's free if you do it that way. And when I say free, it's free because you're doing it. You're not paying anybody to put those forms together for you. You're trying to do it yourself. So you're going to end up going back and forth to the courthouse, which is wasting your time. Because your time is valuable.
Right. Now, one thing that I did do, I said, okay, well, let me see if I can just do this myself. Because the sticker shop at the top of the episode, when you said it was, $3,200? I mean, it's expensive to get an attorney to do it. I mean, yes, they take care of the paperwork and they kind of shepherd you through the process.
And that was then,
now, if you got $3,000?
No, that was then, Rosalind.
Well, $4,000 or $5,000.
Now it's $5,000.
I mean, great. Yeah. Do that. Because it takes the pressure off you to do it. But at the time, I was like, look, okay, let me see if I can download these papers.
Yeah, let me see what I can do.
And so what I did was I just went through, and because some of the questions are pretty straightforward, right? And you just answer all the questions to the best of your ability, right? And then I used things like my son's IEP, because you have to support your claim as to why you think your loved one, your child, needs guardianship, why you think you need to be their guardian, and you know best because you are your child's parent, right? Besides the obvious, right? You're their parent. You know them better than anyone else, and you can state the reasons. I was like, well, the court's not going to tell me
what I know about
my child.
So let me help you there. That should be the only thing. Well, in my capacity, my business, that's the only thing that you have to do. There's a little snippet that we have that you just need to write. That's all you have to do when a person comes to me. Okay, they just write a little snippet about their diagnosis of that child. They write what their child is able to do, how long they've been in school. What they're able to do, what they're not able to do, and why they want to be the guardian. That's all I ask.
But I just want to add this too. I just want to add that in addition to me, writing, all of my supporting claims as to why I felt like I should be my son's guardian, the IEP statements, right? Because I had, I don't know, years, boxes full of those, right? Statements from his, pediatricians and, all of those things, evaluations that had already been done.
Right.
Even though the court is going to do their own, they're going to order their own evaluations, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But, anything that I thought that I could attach to the paperwork.
Right.
To support that, to let them know I've done my homework. I know what I'm talking about here.
And let me say this. And that's what I hear a lot of parents say when they call me. Miss Barbara, what all do I need to give you?
You give them more than enough. You give them more than you think that they need.
No.
Well, that's what I did in my case.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
So they're like, let's go ahead and, this chick, let's go ahead and process her paperwork.
Wait a minute. That's what I'm trying to avoid parents having to do. That's what I do. I try to avoid parents having.
But see, I didn't have you.
You didn't have me. You didn't have me.
I was out here riding solo. Trying to get it done. I didn't have anyone.
Right.
To
And this is what happens to parents. This is what makes parents get discouraged because
it's daunting. It's a daunting process.
It's a daunting process. So
let's help these parents out here, Barbara.
Yeah, we're gonna help them. So here we go. So. All your IEPs and all those things that you think that you needed for documentation to prove your point, you don't need it.
Now you tell me.
Yeah, now I'm telling you.
Thanks.
You don't need it because the evaluation, as we talked about what you just said, is going to take place. They're going to order evaluation from the courts. So what needs to be done is that document needs to be filled out completely with all the understanding of it's right. So that is where I come in. And I think that is the next one is do it yourself. And then we go through a legal, you can try to go through a legal aid or something of that matter.
And so what do you consider yourself?
I consider myself a preparer. I am a specialist. I was going to say tax because I do taxes too, but
that's another episode, Barbara. That's another episode.
I am a guardianship preparer.
Okay, so a guardianship preparer,
right?
So then you could get so parents can locate. They can call you. Do you help with other across states?
Let me say this: other states are so different. I'll give you an example. I just talked to Alabama. I got 4 different ways that they go about doing guardianship. I was like, what? This is crazy.
In Texas, I hear.
Texas, you have
no disrespect
to have an
to Texas, right?
No disrespect
but
to Texas.
I hear that Texas is one of the most complicated states to get guardianship done.
Well, because they force you to get an attorney.
Oh,
you have to have an attorney. And I know that personally. I've been down to their courthouse in what county? It's not Harris County. I've been to Harris County in Texas, which is Houston. And you have to have an attorney in that state to file for guardianship there. Now, let me say this. It's only because of the fact that everybody's not doing their job. And I mean that. And
wow,
I really
what a shocker.
And I mean that because when the young attorney or the young attorney that came out and talked to me, he explained to me why an attorney was needed in the state of Texas. And it's because the clerks will take the paperwork across the counter, not go through it, not verify what is there. So the paperwork goes across the counter and goes to the judge. The judge it's not filled out correctly. It's not complete. Nothing is there that is needed to be there. So to avoid that, go get an attorney. Let the attorney handle it for you. And that's how they cut out that.
Which I can see on the one hand, right, because you're tying up the court's time.
You are.
Right, you're wasting the court's time.
You're wasting the court's time.
I get that, right, but at the same time, I'm not sure how I feel about that because not everyone can afford
the attorney. So what is happening is there's a lot of people in that state that does not have guardianship over their young adult. I have a niece. That's why I went to their courthouse to get the paperwork, to prepare it so that my niece could have her daughter guardianship.
Okay, but if they needed, okay, so help me understand. Maybe I lost something here. There's something lost in translation here. Okay. If they need an attorney and you're not an attorney, how were you able to help get the paperwork?
I couldn't. Through the court? That's what I'm saying. I couldn't. Not there.
Oh, but you didn't know that until you got there.
I didn't know that until I got there.
Oh, my gosh.
I didn't know it. I went down there to pick up the document, just thinking I could go in like I do here in Georgia. Right. Go in, grab the petition, read it, go through it, fill it out. I have knowledge. I went to school to become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Okay, That's another story, long story. But anyway, I went to school to become a lawyer. So documentation is
your thing.
Is my thing. I love it. This is my passion. This is what I love doing. And I go in there, ready, set. And the lady said, no, hold up. We need to let you speak to one of our, young attorneys, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay.
So are there other individuals like you who can help with this? Because we've got the do-it-yourself option, the legal aid option, which is probably not going to help very many people based on what you're saying. Hire an attorney, right?
Right.
Are there other services?
Let me say this.
That can help.
I'm so proud that you asked me that.
I try.
Because there are some services that'll tell you they'll do it for you. Like you go through some of these family services, resources, and they'll say, oh yeah, we'll help you prepare it. They don't always do it right.
But you will.
But I will. Let me say
so
this.
You're available to help.
I'm available throughout the state of Georgia. In the state of Georgia, every county. I am going to research that county and find out what I need for it. And I'm going to make sure that your paperwork get into that county.
Beautiful. And we're going to circle back how people can get in touch with you.
Yes.
But for the people who are listening, who are in various states, who need help, who can't afford an attorney, who have very limited options, they should probably check somewhere, do a Google search to see if there is someone like you.
Yes. Check to see if there is a preparer. If there is, check to see at your probate courts. Contact your probate courts in all other states.
Yes.
Contact your probate courts and see what is needed for you to have guardianship over your young adult. I was told, I don't know exactly, in the state of New York, guardianship is not actually necessary because of the school records that they've followed throughout their years. They know that that parent is the parent. They know medically that this child has a disability because it follows them. Every state is not handled that way. Georgia's not one of them, for sure. So know your state. Know what it is that you need in that state.
Right.
If there's an attorney that needs to be done, make sure you contact an attorney. Contact a legal aid society in your state. Ask them, who do they prefer you to go to? Because I know right here, some of the legal aids have sent people to me that can't afford an attorney.
Oh, wow.
Okay? They don't want to say it, but I'm saying it.
You'll say it.
I'll say it. They come to me and said, Ms. Glover, I was told you could help me. Yes, I am going to help. I'm going to help. Because if you come to me, I'm going to help you. That's for sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, Barbara, I like the word demystify. Okay. So can you provide an overview of the process? Once all the paperwork is complete, what happens next? And I can say this. Now, I don't know how much the process has changed, but from my experience, once the paperwork was accepted by the courts, I just simply had to sort of just jump through the hoops, which was they scheduled the appointments with the evaluator.
You're going to have a sheriff come to your home.
Well, I forgot about that part. But yeah, I kind of blocked that part out. So yes, so they were right. So then the individuals are served appropriately.
Yes.
And then, so when I say jump through the hoops, so whatever all of that entails, the serving of the paperwork, and then going to the appointments for the evaluations and all of that, and then there's the hearing.
An attorney. Now let me say this: if you do it for yourself and you do not hire an attorney, and you come and you hire Miss Barbara to do your paperwork, or you do it yourself, what is going to happen is an attorney is going to be appointed for your son or your daughter or your parent or whoever you're petitioning for guardianship. They're going to have an attorney that is going to be appointed to them by the courts. Now, so far, in at least, I'm going to say 10 counties that I know of or more here in the state of Georgia, that is how it is done. There are some counties that say, well, you have to find the attorney. And there is one county here that says you have to find the attorney. That's Forsyth County. So I have to go when I'm working with a client from Forsyth, I have to find an attorney that will work with that young individual and represent them. But when you file at the courthouse, the fee that you're filing covers that attorney in most counties when you pay. In Forsyth County, you have to negotiate with the attorney that's going to represent that young person. A negotiation fee. It can run you anywhere from, let's say, $300 to maybe $500. It depends on the attorney. I do my best to try to stick with one attorney's office in Forsyth County to work with.
Now, who absorbs those fees?
That fee goes directly to the attorney when you get that one.
So who pays the attorney?
You do. In Forsyth County.
Oh, wow.
In Forsyth County. Okay.
So then the petitioner has to pay.
The petitioner has to pay.
Okay.
Now, let me say this. In some of the other counties here in Georgia, like Gwinnett, DeKalb, Fullerton, Newton County, I think it's Newton, Coweta County, Hall County, and I can go on with a couple more. When you pay your fees, it covers that attorney that will be appointed to that individual, the young individual or individual at all. It pays that, okay? But like I said, some counties have you to pay for it. Some counties have you to pay for the evaluator that will be evaluating that young person. I have same thing with Foresight. You have to find the evaluator. I have an evaluator that I go to that helps me with my cases that is in Forsyth County. You know what I'm saying? I have an attorney that I work with for Forsyth County. But that's things that a parent that is doing it for themselves is going to get so frustrated with. Because you're going to be like, the evaluation said $1,200. The attorney says $500-$600. And me personally, I have people already set up to do that. That is not going to charge you that. But because you don't know, as a parent, as an individual, you don't know these things, it can go skyrocket on you.
Right.
Okay. And then you want to say, oh, I'll just get an attorney. I'll just let an attorney do this. Then he's going to charge you $5,000.
Right. And those are just his fees.
Those are just
because you still have to pay for an evaluator.
Well, it depends.
Right?
It depends on the attorney. It depends on the attorney because I have not worked with attorneys. So I don't know how they do it, but I know this. That attorney's fees is going to be on the top $5,000. Okay? Then...
And that's just here in Georgia, folks.
That's just here in Georgia. Now, that's his fees. Then it's the call in because I forgot to give you this and I need to ask you a question about that. That's another $250.
Right, because there's a thing called billable hours.
Billable hours, exactly. That's some more money. Then turn around. We don't even know if it's going to be that his fees is going to cover the court costs or this or that. We don't have a clue because I don't work with that attorney or them attorney.
All I hear is cha-ching,
cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And this is what and why. This is what and why, or I should say why and what made me become a prepared to do it for parents.
But you know what? I don't want for parents to feel discouraged or defeated by this. No. Because the benefits of having guardianship
is way more
far outweighs the consequences of not having it.
Exactly.
And so it's worth the process. It's a small price to pay in the grand scheme of things. And it's peace of mind, which you cannot put a price tag on.
You can't put a price tag
right?
on. It's one less thing that you have to think about when it comes to your young adult. The comfort of it, because it covers so many areas.
It's peace of mind.
It covers so many areas. I don't know if Ross is ready for me to say this, but when you come to I Am, which is my company, when you come there, we have a set fee of $450 at this time. I'm going to say at this time because will be going up. I will be going up. But if you heard this on this podcast, it's going to cost you $450. Now, I normally charge an extra $50 due to the fact that if you want me to actually file the document for you, that means I take the document to the courthouse and I file it with the right documents, which is your ID, your husband's ID, or whoever the other petitioner's ID, and the ward's ID, so that we can file it and there's no questions asked. That's an extra $50 for me. Now, that's my fees. At that time, you're going to pay your court fees. Now, let me say this. Court fees run you anywhere between $560, depending on the county, up to maybe $900. That's the court fees here in the state of Georgia. It depends on what county you're in. And I give you that wide spectrum because that is how it works. It depends. You do not pay that to me. You pay that to the courts. I turn around when I'm filing for you. I call you when I'm at that courthouse. You can Zelle it to me, or you can hand me a check that will be paid out to the courthouse, not to Barbara Glover, not to I Am. That is for the courts.
Is that a personal check or a cashier's check?
It could be personal. It could be cashier, money order, whatever you want to pay that court with, fine. Now, know this. If you decide to pay them by card and you go to the courthouse yourself, they're going to charge you a fee for your card. Give you an example. In Gwinnett County, it is $614 to file for an adult guardianship / conservatorship. All of that can be done together. Let me let you know. That's on one form. And that's if you pay by cash or if you pay by check, right there. Now, if you turn around and you pay by card, that means credit card or debit card, there is an additional fee, which runs you $628, and I think it's 49 cents, because they, put that little tax on there for using your card. Okay, that additional amount. So know that there will be an additional fee if you come through I Am, because you're going to have to pay the courthouse. Okay? But let me let you know, once you pay those fees to the courts, you've paid my fee. Once you pay, there's no other fees. There's no other fees. You do not have to go outside of your pocket for nothing else. Your annual reports that are done, they're annual reports. When you do that annual report, it's free. Fill it out, turn it in.
Is that the same as the personal status report?
That's the personal status report.
Those have to be filled out yearly.
Yeah, yearly.
Correct. Barbara, how long does it take to get through this process?
This process takes you, depending on the county again, the average should only take you, once it has been filed into the courts, should take you 2 months.
Okay.
8 weeks.
That's pretty quick.
That's pretty quick. Now, but if you go through an attorney, it could take you years or years. Why? Because they're going to put you on the back burner. Guardianship is not that important to our attorneys. I'm just being perfectly honest with you.
That is a huge time difference.
Yes, it is. And how do I know that?
2 months versus
Ms.
a
Barbara,
year?
Yeah. You say, Ms. Barbara, how do you know that? How do you know that's what they do?
That is mind-blowing.
I'm going to tell you why. Because this is all that I do. All I do is guardianships. I prepare them, I will file them for you, and I get them in. And I want you to have it as quick as possible, because I, as a parent with a special need young adult, understand the urgency.
And I love that you have a level of sensitivity to that, to understand just the urgency.
The urgency of it.
It is critical. It's critical. And sometimes it is life and death.
It could be life and death situations,
Yeah.
So when I say that attorneys take so long, is because that paper is going from you, and they're going to call you back, and they're going to got billing fees, and they got this going on, and next thing you know, all these different things is taking place behind the scenes that is taking them time to get it to the courts or have it filed or whatever. In my case, it's no longer than you finish, what I'm asking you to get notarized and signed.
Right.
You've done that, and we see everything is done. You send me a copy of everything that's been done. Okay, we're ready to the courts. At that time, it's up to the courts. So now it's filed. We're looking at about 2 months. You're going to start receiving paperwork in less than 2 to 3 weeks in the mail once it's filed. Once that paperwork starts coming in, telling you what the next steps are, at that point, you're looking for that last letter that says the hearing date is set. So you're looking at that hearing date, and that hearing date is telling you we are where we need to be. The judge is getting ready to see you, okay?
That sounds great. And I'm just, I wish I could say I'm shocked by that. That I'm surprised that attorneys don't feel the need to sort of put a rush on guardianship.
No,
you know what I mean?
They don't.
As critical as they are, that they don't carry more weight.
Well, because it doesn't bring them in that residual income. It's not something that they're going to keep going back and forth with.
It's a one and done.
It's a one and done. It's a one and done. Now, let me say this with me. Yes, it's a one and done, but I have parents that call me that I did 6 years ago. And they'll say, oh, Miss Barbara, can you tell me what I can do for SSI? I've got a problem with this. I'm not charging you extra because I'm a concerned parent like you. And the information that you give to me or the resources that we go back and forth with, guess what? We just keep going. We become friends. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I become a resource for you. And that's what it's about.
You become like this community.
I'm a community. It's a community with me. You know, a parent will call me and say, oh, Miss Barbara, I just ran into someone and, you know, I talked to them and they're going to need guardianship. I gave them your name. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it's about. It's about word of mouth in our community. And I am an upstanding person in the community who is willing to help you, the parent, the wannabe guardian, the petitioner, get this done.
Yeah, and I love that because it's one of the things that I really push hard with my podcast here is connection, community, and camaraderie. And it's such a wonderful thing. I'm glad you mentioned that.
We have to talk to each other.
We do. We really do. And so I also want to ask here, is there a way to expedite a guardianship?
Okay.
A conservatorship or POA?
Let me say this. Emergency guardianships are available. Normally they take 72 hours to do. I do those also. The thing is, emergency guardianships come most of the time when a parent has had to call a 1013.
Okay, can you explain what a 1013 is?
A 1013 is, say your individual is a little violent and they're destroying the house, or you're in a situation where they kind of have lost it and you've got to call the police in to help you to get it under control. They come in, the emergency units come in and they turn around and take your young adult to the hospital, to a psych ward. Okay.
Now, 1013 is really just a form that has to be filled out.
Well, that's what it's called.
Right.
It's called a 1013. Okay. It's not a form. It's actually called a 1013.
Describing the situation.
Describing the situation that it is. So when that 1013 is called, a lot of times I'll get a call from a parent and says, Miss Glover, I need to apply for guardianship right away. My son is at the hospital. Let's just say Grady. My son is at Grady. They have him in a psych ward and I don't have guardianship and I need to do something immediately. Okay, let's get busy. Boom, boom, boom. We're doing fast, expedient work because we have to get the paperwork done, get it down to the courthouse, have the judge. Because it's an emergency, the judge has to look at it. We have to have the evaluator come out to the facility where the young man or young lady is, have them to evaluate them, then go back to the court. And all this has to be done in 72 hours.
Wow.
Now, what that covers? That only covers that young person for 90 days, 60 to 90 days. That guardianship.
So that's not a permanent guardianship. It is temporary for 60 to 90 days.
60 to 90 days, yes. Yes. And that means if it's, let's say the person has schizophrenia, okay? Let's say it's one of those type of things. And you need to get them housing. You need to get their insurance done. You got to speed this thing up as fast as possible. A lot of that is why we end up doing emergency guardianships for those different reasons. They'll come, we need that form together right away, boom, we get it done. Parents that are just getting permanent guardianship for their child's disability, like your son and my son and others out here, that is the process for permanent guardianship. That is the 2 months. We get it in there in 2 to 3 months or whatever. You're before a judge. Now you have guardianship for a lifetime. So,
Barbara, can a person conceivably apply for a temporary and a permanent guardianship at the same time?
Yes. When you fill out a form for the emergency guardianship, there's a section there asking you if you need to, or will you, not if you need to, will you be applying for a permanent guardianship? At that time, you check yes or no. a lot of times in cases like that, most likely you want to say yes. Okay. Because with schizophrenia and things like that, the judges know that you can take medicine, the evaluators know you can take medicine, and it'll kind of clear it up. The problem that we're seeing today is there's too many people that are not taking their medicine. And because they're not taking the medicine, it becomes an ongoing situation. So when I first started doing this, there was a lot of judges that would not even look at schizophrenia. They were just like, nah, okay, we'll do an emergency if need to, but nah. And they push it on to the side. That is not the case anymore. Now they're getting more into, yes, this is needed. So, yeah, you can apply.
Okay, and what about a POA? If someone needs a POA, is there such a thing as applying for an emergency
POA?
An expedited POA or anything, just in case somebody's wondering about that?
Let's go here. For a POA, there probably is where you can sign for a POA. It's no more than pulling it off your system, getting the form and filling it
because
out.
that's just a signature.
Because it's just a signature.
It's just a signature.
It's just a signature.
Okay.
Now, you do have some that you might have to run through the courts, but that's rare.
Right, and those have to be notarized.
That's all it has to be.
Okay.
Notarized at best. That's it.
Okay, so Barbara, how can listeners contact you to get more information about guardianship, conservatorship, or power of attorney, or to make an appointment for a consultation or for assistance?
Okay, let me say this. For consultation, I do not charge you anything. I just want
Yay!
No, I do not charge for consultation because I'm not worried about you asking me questions. I'm worried about you getting the guardianship.
Wonderful.
That's my concern. Mm-hmm. So you asking me questions about it, that comes a dime a dozen. That's no problem. Mm-hmm. You actually getting it is very important. Mm-hmm. That's worth its weight in gold. So you can contact me through my website, which is www.eyaamllc.com, or you can email me at eyaam404@gmail.com, or you can call me directly. My phone number is 678-368-0040. My phone is always on. Believe me.
Wonderful. I'm Rosalind Martin, your host of the Black Hue Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. I've been speaking with Barbara Glover, special needs advocate and founder of I Am LLC. Thank you so much for speaking with me, Barbara.
You are so welcome.
Take care. You. Stick around, because coming up will be the really dumb things that people say about autism, Volume 1. Of the Black Hue Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. I'm back to share the really dumb things people say about autism, Volume 1. There's no known cure for ASD or any sort of pill to cause it to magically disappear. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, ASD is a developmental disability that can cause significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges. Also, according to the CDC, behavioral interventions are often used to address the deficits in these three core domains, but there are no treatments, pharmacological or behavioral, proven to cure ASD. That said, as Black parents of adult children with ASD, many of us have been indoctrinated to the many ignorant, hateful, and just plain old really dumb things that people say about our loved ones with ASD. While there have been so many advances around the treatment and care of individuals on the spectrum, it's baffling that people could still be so uneducated about ASD. In this segment titled, Really Dumb Things That People Say About Autism, I'll share some things that people have said about ASD itself and to and about people who have it. Keep listening. Some of them are truly head scratchers. Number 1. People with autism are either really dumb or they're geniuses. Number 2. My mom used to argue with me that there was some study done where they put carbon dioxide masks on autistic children and it cured them of their autism. She also told me about another study where they surgically implanted magnets in an autistic girl's brain, and whenever they were activated, she could feel empathy or some ish. I'm not even going to explain how wildly wrong everything about that sentence is. Highly doubt any of these studies are real, but this is one of the many reasons why I haven't told my family I got diagnosed with ADHD. LOL. Number 3. People grow out of autism. Number 4. If you really think about it, everyone's a little autistic, said my doctor. Number 5. Your child isn't autistic. They can talk. Let's always do our part to raise autism awareness and educate others. For tips on how to raise autism awareness and promote education, please visit blackhughessociety.com. That's blackhughess, Hues, society.com. I'm Rosalind Martin, and I've been your host here on the Black Hughes Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast. I hope this episode was both enlightening and uplifting for you. Thanks for listening. Like what you heard? Be sure to subscribe to and download the Black Hughes Society Voices Across the Spectrum podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other platforms, and get new episodes as they become available. Tell your family and friends about it too, because I've got another great episode coming up where we as Black parents who have adult children with ASD will connect once again to discuss another meaningful topic. As I wrap up, let's chill out together for just a few minutes more with some music. You see, I believe in music as therapy, as a natural high, and as a salve for the soul. Until the next episode, I wish you love, peace, and positive energy.